My guests today are from Brunswick County Smart Start. They are, to my immediate left, Linda Gironda. She is the executive director of that organization. And to her left is Helen Gabriel. And Helen, I want to get this right. You are the program and evaluations director.
That's correct.
Great. We have a beautiful prop to my left, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. But first, would one of you ladies tell us what Smart Start is all about and what you do? What do you do?
Well, Smart Start of Brunswick County is part of an organization that's part of a network of Smart Start across North Carolina. Smart Start's a very unique organization. It began in North Carolina and it's across the state. What we do is provide services and programs for children birth to age 5 and support families and ensure that we have quality early care and education across the entire state. Here locally, we look at what the needs are specific to Brunswick County, and we provide services and work with other organizations to ensure children have what they need to succeed in life.
Great. And what I heard you say is from birth to 5.
From birth to 5, that's our focus.
And then the public school system picks up soon thereafter.
That's right. We want them to succeed in school.
Absolutely.
We want them to be ready when they get there.
That's the idea. We're here to talk about your program called The First 2,000 Days. Would you tell us about the program in general?
Okay. Well, the first 2,000 days is a message that Smart Start across North Carolina is using to help people understand the urgency with early childhood development and education, because 2,000 days is the approximate number of days between when a child is born and when that child enters kindergarten. We talk about 5 years, which sounds like some period of time, but when you break it down to 2,000 days, it really does not sound like a significant period of time to ensure that a child's ready to enter school.
You're right.
It's also when 90% of the brain develops during those first 2,000 days.
90%?
Yes.
Wow. Okay, well, let's talk about a few of the specifics. But one of you mentioned before the show that so much of this relates to one's opportunity to succeed later in life, and you mentioned the military. Tell us about that, for example.
Well, the military leaders every year select 3 top priorities for our nation, and early childhood education and development was one of the top 3, because at this time 75% of individuals between the ages of 18 to 24 would not successfully enter the military, either for physical limitations, inability to pass the entrance exam, or possibly a criminal background.
And if it applies to the military, it applies to all of life.
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's correct.
It's very important that for our national security that we have a strong military. So
Absolutely.
It's important that young women and men are qualified, meet the criteria to enter the armed forces.
And Linda, the same principles probably apply to crime and its relationship to these first 5 years.
Absolutely. Investing in the early years, ensuring quality care and education will reduce the crime rates. Our law enforcement officers understand that.
And we know that.
Yeah, we do know that. And actually in North Carolina in 2010, over $1 billion was spent on corrections. So it's really important in order to reduce that number and reduce crime that we have focus on the early years.
And I know we're singing a similar song, but the same is true as to economic impact. Speak to that for a moment, if you
Well,
will.
we need a skilled workforce. We need people to be able to go into the workforce and be qualified to do what is required of them. And in order to have a globally competitive workforce, the United States Chamber of Commerce has actually said the best investments we can make is in the early years to ensure that our workforce stays strong and that in the future we'll be able to compete globally.
Sure, sure. Helen, before we began taping, we were talking about brain development and the recent high technology that tells us so much more than what we used to know. Tell us more about that.
Okay, well, what has happened is through medical technology, through MRI imaging, we can actually see what is happening in the brain. We've known always that interaction with children is very important during the early years, but you can actually now see parts of the brain that are being stimulated and parts of the brain that are not being stimulated. So the evidence is there that shows that's what happens between those first 2,000 days is so critical.
So we knew that, but this tells us a picture in a compelling way, right?
Exactly.
Okay. Let's talk about the chart now. Linda, could you tell us basically what this chart illustrates?
Well, this shows in a very striking way how quickly development takes place in the early years of life. If you start here at 0, here's at birth, and you see the sensory pathways are developing for vision and hearing, and look how quickly the connections are made for language and cognitive functions and all of the sensory pathways. Your brain is actually being wired during these early months and in the early years, and you can see how critical it is that we provide the necessary stimulation and that children are cared for and provided educational opportunities and language opportunities during this critical time, so that in these later years where these pathways are not connecting as much, they will be able to succeed. They will have a strong foundation for learning, and it will impact their entire life. So it's really a very critical time for us to focus on.
I'm sorry, excuse me. Are these the high points at which learning occurs?
Where the connections are being made,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, in the brain connections. All the synapses are firing, and the wiring actually is taking place in the brain. As you grow, they pruned out some of the synapses that are not used, but you have to have a strong foundation to start with.
So as with 2 out of these 3, the synapse development has begun, it's high, and it's back to its conclusion by age 6 or so.
Right, and look at, this is just 1 year.
Sure.
Correct.
Yeah.
So,
That's the first year of life.
Please.
I'm sorry. So at 4 months, the connections for hearing and vision are developed. They're peaking at 4 months. And at 9 months, the connections for language are peaking. And at the end of 12 months, that higher cognitive function has peaked. And
Red
what's
line.
really important about this time frame, those first 2 years specifically, these connections are still flexible. They're actually like plastic, and you can actually start to change the trajectory for that child if you pay attention to what's happening during those time
Okay.
frames.
We've known so much of this, but we're learning so much more every year. But this is not conjecture. These are studies and results that have been tested by science or by those in the business. These are solid conclusions, are they not?
Absolutely. With all of the advances now, they can actually see the pictures of the brain. They know what's happening, and they can tell us what we can do, basically, to support what's happening in the brain. So it's based on scientific research.
Okay. Helen, one of the things we didn't talk about is the development of the social side of an individual and one's social skills. That's as important as some of these other aspects we've discussed, is it not?
Yes, it is. I mean, academics are important, but there's also what we call soft skills, and those are the skills that ensure that somebody can get along well with others. They have compassion, and many employers will indicate that they would prefer an employee that can get along with others, even more important than the qualifications they may come into the job with. So again, not only is the language and the sensory and the cognitive, but you've also got what really makes a person a kind human being down the road.
Very good point. Very good point. You serve students here in Brunswick County. Tell us about your services briefly.
Well, we have a number of different services. We're an umbrella of different things. We provide services to families through our Parents as Teachers program, which is a home visitation program to help parents learn about child development, promote literacy, and we work with 70 families now, 70 children, infants and toddlers in the county. We work with the child care providers to ensure they're providing quality programs for the children in their care, and we also also administer the NC Pre-K program, which Helen has done a great job of getting children enrolled. They'll be starting on Monday. This Monday.
Well, we'll talk about that in just a moment.
And so we administer that program as well, and we have a Raising a Reader program and health programs.
Wow.
Our programs change as the needs of the children in the county change.
Sure. Helen, tell us about the pre-K program.
Okay. Well, the North Carolina Pre-Kindergarten program is a program that helps children transition into kindergarten more successfully. And we do that by placing children in high-quality child care centers that actually apply to be considered as NC Pre-K sites. So they meet a pretty high standard when they apply as a center to be that site. And the teachers in the classrooms have a bachelor's degree in early childhood education. They have birth to kindergarten licensing. We require a curriculum be used specifically. So it's all these quality pieces during that 4-year time when they're 4 years old that will get them ready for kindergarten and hopefully thereafter. We've talked with many of the teachers and principals over the past years, and they can pretty much see children that have been a part of the NC Pre-K program when they enter into kindergarten.
Are there a handful of such facilities around the county?
We are in private child care settings at the moment, and we are located throughout all of Brunswick County.
Okay. And for those young mothers and fathers who have young children, they're free to contact you?
Absolutely. We always accept applications from families.
Great. Well, you're touching lives, and you're touching them at that most important time when they're very young. And we all know that if we catch our students early and provide them with the resources they need, we'll reduce crime, we'll provide opportunities for these young men and women, and we'll affect the fabric of our country throughout.
Absolutely.
So, Linda and Helen, thank you for being with us
Thank
today.
you so much, Jim,
And
for
telling
having
us
us.
the story about Smart Start. Thanks
Thank
again.
you.
Thank you.